welcome back to the Ourlads Football Channel. That's right, we've been MIA for just a little bit, but that's the deal. It's the summertime. There's a lot going on, but we are here, and we are still talking Big 12 football. When we last left you, it was the Big 12 offensive side here on our Ourlads Scouting Show. Both Hayden and Jon were with me then, and they're with me again on this show. This is actually going to be our last Power 5 full conference video for scouting for the 2024 season and the 2025 NFL draft, of course. Next week, the next time we do a video, we're going to try to incorporate. We've got 2 more teams from the independents, Connecticut and UMass. We have 2 Pac-12 teams, Washington State and Oregon State, and the entire group of 5. So maybe we'll do one big video there. Or 2 big videos, offense and defense, over the next few weeks. But it's up to these guys, our top scouts here at Ourlads.com. And how are you guys doing? How's it going, Jon?
Good.
How about you, Hayden?
Doing great. Hey, down here at the high school level, we're back in it, 7-on-7 season. So we're out there practicing, competing against some teams. So it's been great. I'm excited to get into college season too.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait. Just want to remind everybody that if you haven't already, you can subscribe. Why not? If you really enjoy these videos, subscribing is something that we would truly appreciate. That's how we can make our shows better production-wise. Obviously, you can see we've had a jump already in production from last year. So it's just going to keep getting better here on the channel. We also want to keep reminding you about the fact that even though the guide season is, you can say it's over, but that's only because it's over because they're all out. But next year is an all-new year. The fact, though, is that the 2024 review guide is fresh and available at ourlads.com. So this one we've been touting for the past month or so, and we were trying to guess who was going to be on the cover, and so we got played because there's 4 guys. So I think this is the first. Jon, is this the first time that they had a couple of guys on the back cover?
Yeah, I think so. I know we did it on the guide other years, but I think it was the first time for the back cover. We gave a lot of suggestions to Peggy, and she kind of came up with they came up with some unique names. I think Tucker had something to do with that.
Yeah, I'm sure. So there you go. This is available. Ourlads 2024 review guide, and of course, if you haven't already ordered the draft guide. This is still, matter of fact, this is still timely. The timely is not going to go away very soon to order the draft guide, especially when you know exactly which players are landing on which teams. So you can order both. Get them both at ourlads.com. All right, let's get into it. And we're talking Big 12 defense here on today's show. We are going to start with the edge rushers. So right now we have 1 player each from both Jon and Hayden, their report that they sent me. We're going to start, Jon, with your player that you wanted to target and discuss. That's Steve Linton out of Baylor, a Texas Tech transfer who actually spent his first 4 years at Syracuse. Seems to have pretty good size. It's 6'5", 235. Statistically speaking, his numbers don't blow you out of the water. So there's more to scouting players than stats. So tell us why you really particularly wanted to talk about him.
Well, he's what I would call an intriguing prospect. He's versatile. One of the reasons I don't have a lot of sacks is he's played linebacker. He plays off the ball, and he's not always rushing the passer. So that's not what he does necessarily. But he has demonstrated that ability. And I would call it more potential. I think this is a work in progress. He's got exceptional length and height for that position. He gets good leverage on blocks. He's still raw, partly because he's been at Syracuse. He played different positions. So we're going to see what he does this year at Baylor. That's, to me, interesting. I think he's an interesting guy. He can create havoc. He's got a lot of tackles for loss. He's got a big motor. He flashes. He's a flash guy right now as far as a pass rusher, but he's shown that he can play versatile positions. He can drop off into coverage as an off-the-ball linebacker. His run defense, as far as playing inside, needs work, and it needs work outside. He just has done so many things. He's been kind of jack of all trades guy. That versatility will possibly do him very well in the NFL. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a high draft pick at this point, but I'm looking at the numbers, the speed, the length, the upside, and I see a guy that let's just see what he does. There's a lot of work that has to be done. He's got limited starting experience. That's part of the reason he transferred. But as a situational player, he's done very well. He's got to develop in all those different areas. So we're looking at him, at least I'm looking at him, as a project at this point in time. I just kind of like him. I noticed some things about him in some film I've watched and looking at some other guys, and I say, this kid's, he might have something. But again, we're not labeling him right now, and he won't be on our list that comes out in October 1st or right around then as one of the top edge prospects. There's not a lot of edge prospects in the Big 12, which is why I decided to go with this guy.
All right. Well, sounds like a guy that from now until the day of the draft, sounds like this is one of those players that whenever we ask you to talk about maybe some sleepers or under the radar picks, this might be a player that you're going to bring up on more than one occasion. I
see him as a stand-up guy in a 3-4.
Okay.
That with all the rotation that these teams are using right now, I think he's got a better than average chance to be a guy that an NFL team will want to invest some time in.
All right. Let's bring in Hayden for, by the way, I think there's only one other player from Baylor on our lists today. So Linton being one of them. Let's now go to Hayden, and Hayden's always good for these diamond in the roughs. And we have an Arizona State transfer who made his way to Colorado, and maybe doesn't have the height, but he's got some good size. BJ Green, 6 sacks last year. Why'd you want to target BJ Green, Hayden?
Well, I specifically wanted to target him because I'm always looking for a great story. I always want to see a guy who rose in the ranks, and BJ Green, he's got one of the best stories in college football that few people know about. Coming out of high school, he had 0 Power 5 offers. He elected to walk on at Arizona State. Now, he wasn't a nobody. He still had 4 FBS offers, just a group of 5 schools, but he chose to bet on himself, ended up going to Arizona State. Now, as a walk-on, it's really rare that you see any walk-on get extensive playing time, nonetheless, as a true freshman, but Green took it even a step further than that. Not only did he play on the defense as a walk-on true freshman, but he ended up leading the team in sacks, becoming the 4th freshman in school history to do so. Now, the Arizona State website listed the other 3 who they were, all 3 very highly touted recruits out of high school. One of those guys being none other than Terrell Suggs. So Green's an elite company with that performance, with that exceptional freshman season. And as you can imagine, he was put on scholarship after that season. It's continued to improve each and every year. But during those 3 seasons with Arizona State, he's amassed a total of 13.5 sacks, 21 tackles for loss, and his lone forced fumble actually came none other than first overall pick, Caleb Williams. So he's got that on his resume as well. He's expected to have a major role this year in Colorado's defense. He's already left his mark. Just hearing some things coming from the Colorado coaching staff and from the media, he's leaving his mark so far. Deion Sanders has even gone on record saying that he thinks Green should be a first-round draft pick this coming season. So the hype around Green, especially in Boulder, Colorado, is going to be through the roof this season. But took a look for him myself. He's got a great build. He's got muscular arms, massive legs for his size. He's really quick off the ball. He engages with power, creates knockback. He shows violent hands-on engagement, shows a number of ways to win in one-on-one situation. He also shows the athleticism to peel with running backs out of the backfield, meaning if he's on a blitz or they've got a blitz and he's got to be responsible for carrying that back because no one else does, he's someone that will be able to play and be able to cover running backs potentially at the next level as well. But his most impressive trait to me was his burst. He might have the best burst in the class for the position, at least of guys that I've watched so far. His burst off the line is just through the roof. One of the guys that, when we're talking about who has the best burst or the best get off, he's going to be in that conversation. Now, for an edge rusher, he's not overly long. I know Coach Coop, one of his big things about edge rushers is got to have the wingspan, got to be long. He's not going to be a guy that's going to wow you with that length, but you turn on the tape, he's an absolute monster on the field. I fully expect his name to come off the board early in the 2025 draft.
Well, I love those kind of guys, those stories. There's always guys that that beat the tape, in terms of the wingspan and those kinds of things. I got, some good friends that are scouts, and we argue all the time about that stuff. I'm always giving them up. I'm always giving it as they call it, the exception that proves the rule. So, but how I feel about that. I think it's a good pick.
Any chance that he winds up getting some time inside, and due to that limitation, the size length limitation?
I think definitely on passing downs, definitely could be a guy that you bump inside for sure.
Yeah,
I wouldn't expect him to be a guy to
What kind of weight are we talking about here? I haven't seen.
270.
Yeah. It's going to be a little tweening. It's in the tween.
Yeah.
In between.
Definitely not a guy.
But you never know. You never know.
Definitely not a guy you want every
day these days. Everybody wants Matabuke.
Yeah,
that's right.
All right, a couple other players that my best of the rest that I wanted, a couple of guys that I just wanted to throw out there that was not on your list. And of course, we're talking about making sure this is something that, in case you're joining us for the first time, as you can see, it's just asking the scouts to give me one player each. Doesn't have to be the very best player, as Hayden just mentioned. Even as John mentioned, it just could be a player that you like for whatever particular reason. And we're going to talk more about a lot of these players and players we haven't even discussed on all these videos when we preview the season a lot more intensely and more. And of course, you can check out the depth charts at ourlads.com. You can check out, of course, every team, and you can see what we're talking about, because there's a lot of players that we still haven't talked about at every position. But I wanted to add in a couple of players here. Tyler Baddy out of BYU. Here's a guy that seems to have pretty good size. And he also led the BYU Cougars the last 2 years in tackles for loss and sacks. Matter of fact, he's led the team in sacks 3 of his 4 years, even though he only has 15, but still he has led the team. And so I wanted to put him in there. And also, and again, this is the name that we've had at least I've had the hardest time with. I just don't know if it's Malachi or Malachi, but Malachi or Malachi Lawrence out of Central Florida has really taken off. He's a young kid, so he's probably a couple years away, but he had a really good year last year. So keep an eye on him as a kid. But Baddy's a guy that I really wanted to zero in on. I don't know if you guys had anything to say about Baddy.
I haven't watched him yet, so I don't have anything to say on him quite yet.
I've seen a little bit of him in watching Bywater. But and he can be pretty disruptive sometimes coming off the edge. But again, I haven't studied him at this point. But that's going to be something Hayden and I will be doing for sure.
Yep. That was my point. There's a lot of players that we're going to be getting more in-depth on as we get closer to the regular season. All right. Let's talk inside at defensive tackle, John. And Dante Corleon is the player that you wanted to discuss. Big boy out of Cincinnati. Still pretty young. But he seems to have already, matter of fact, even 2022 might have been a better season. But this kid looks like, he's got the ability to potentially be a dominant player.
Yeah, the thing about, they call him the Godfather for obvious reasons. And but this is a guy that I really like. I don't know. I think the scouts are going to be all over the board on him. They're not going to like the length. I haven't seen the official stuff just yet. I haven't looked at it. I know I've got it. I just haven't looked at it. But the length doesn't appear to be there. And he's right in that 6'1", 320 range. He's a nose tackle, but he plays all over. He's extremely quick at the snap. He can hold a point, and he can bench press a lineman to keep him off. He plays normally at a low pad level and good with leverage on blocks. Excellent interior ball location. He's relentless working to the ball. He's extremely powerful. He's can be violent with his hands, and he's got very good first step quickness. And that violent strike that he's got is unique, with that punch that he uses to come off a block. And he can get to the quarterback with that first step quickness. But he doesn't have a lot of technique as a pass rusher at this point. He's more of a collapse the pocket guy. and he's probably not going to be a consistent sack guy in the pass rush. So if you're looking for, the Matabuke type player, he's not going to be that guy. He doesn't always get off blocks quickly, and I think the wingspan may be a factor there. I'm not sure. Want to study him some more, but I really love the power. I love the way he makes plays in line, and I like the way that the team Cincinnati uses him. He's versatile. They line him up all over. They play him as a 5 technique sometimes, but he's at his best as a nose tackle, taking on those double teams and creating havoc on zone blocking schemes, especially. So he's a solid player. And I'm not so sure if he wouldn't have come out this year, which one of the reasons I looked at him is I thought he was coming out this year, is, his ability to cave in the interior and his violence. I thought he might have been the first nose tackle taken. He might have been a second-day pick this year. I'm not sure where he's going to fit with this group. I understand this is a very, very good group of defensive tackles, so he might have been better served coming out last year, in all honesty. But there must have been some pretty good NIL money to make it at Cincinnati this year. So there we have it. But anyway, I'm looking at a really solid player, and let's just see where he goes.
I would like to
go ahead.
I was going to add on to that too. I'm not sure if you guys had the chance to see it or not. They recently found he went to the hospital. They found blood clots in his lungs, announced that he's going to miss this entire season. So we're definitely going to be thinking about him over here at Ourlads and, praying that everything's going to be all right with him. But
I didn't see that.
Recently announced, I think it was a couple weeks ago now, blood clots in his lungs, and he's just going to miss this season. So obviously
he's not going to play this year?
No, he's out.
Somebody should have corrected me when I had Dante on there. I had no idea. Oh, well.
That's...
I got another one.
He's still a heck of a player. There's no doubt about that. He's still a no doubt great player.
Yeah, and hopefully it's one of those things that he'll be healthy and ready to go because, those are serious. But if they get taken care of, then at least it's not a broken bone or something that could affect him as a player at the next level. Hopefully this is something they can manage, and he'll be okay in 2025. But yes, you do have another player, John. And it's a kid from your backyard there in Iowa. Matter of fact, over in Iowa State.
I'm in Chicago. I'm in the Chicago area, so not quite Iowa. Iowa State's a long ways away.
The old Ourlads headquarters.
That's where it used to be. You're right.
That's it. And Tyler Onyadim, a kid who's, I believe, a fourth-year junior. Talk a little bit about why you also wanted to put him on a list.
First of all, Iowa State is a talented football team. They put out some really good football players, and this is just one of them coming this year. Now, the thing I like about him is he's versatile too. I'm big on versatility with defensive linemen. As I watch the NFL, having a guy that is a dominant player and can move around is gold. And there's a number of guys that, whether it's a 3-4 or a 4-3, and this is a guy that, theoretically could be a 5 technique and a 3-4. He plays on the edge, but he also plays inside. He's an elite athlete, very explosive. He's got the length to generate power with his hands. He's very strong upper body and lower body. He shows explosiveness at the snap. He holds the point. He's got very good stack and shed ability, playing the run. And he shows knee bend, where he can separate from blocks and he can locate the ball. Excellent combination of length and power. Very athletic for his 6'4", 290-pounder. And again, I like him on the edge or inside. I could really see him being that 3-4 defensive end and defenses that, like the Chargers are going to play, Seattle and Baltimore, to name a few. He's very active with his hands. His pass rush technique is good. He's got swipes. He's got a good stab and swim, along with a spin move. I see him as a guy that'll play outside on the edge and then inside in the nickel. He does have some struggles with double teams inside, and there's some inconsistency in pad level. He doesn't have the greatest closing range coming from the outside to get after a mobile quarterback. There's some consistency issues there. But he still is a guy that is going to be interesting to watch, to see whether those weaknesses that I talked about is going to be something that's going to inhibit his value. But that versatility to be able to play the edge and move inside, in my opinion, there's been some good ones that came out last year that could do that. And I think he's the guy that will fit that mold this year. I think he's a really solid prospect. The size factor is outstanding. He did have some slight injury issues that you take a look at, but for the most part, he's been very, very healthy.
Yeah, we talked about that when we were going over the offense, that you can't keep Matt Campbell down too much longer. And we expect Iowa State is going to have a strong season this season. So especially with Texas and Oklahoma gone, even though Utah comes in and Arizona comes in, it's not easy. But yeah, I think they've taken some hits over the last couple of years. They've gotten some experience from some of the younger players. This is just one of them. And I think Iowa State's going to have another one of those Matt Campbell years. So we'll keep an eye on this kid.
This is a kid I like. I mean, again, I know there's some potential issues, weaknesses like they all have, but this kid's an athlete and he's productive. He has been, a really good player, former high school basketball player too. So there's got to be some athleticism there that you can talk about.
All right, Hayden, you are going to talk about one of those teams I just mentioned, Utah. So Utah, and of course defense usually is what drives this program. But inside, Junior Tafuna is a player that, if you just look at it over his career, has been pretty productive. But what's interesting, and I don't know if this has anything to do with just a coincidence or his production, his overall production, but I did notice that in his 3 years, his production actually waned from his first, second to third year. You want to see the opposite. You want to see the slowly go from, one way up to the ladder, but it seems like, it was going the opposite. Again, I don't know if that's a coincidence. You've seen him on tape. I haven't. Talk a little bit about this player and why you like him.
Sure, absolutely. Before we get into it, I'm going to correct myself just slightly when I was talking about Dante Corleon. He's out indefinitely, not out for season. It sounded like some positive updates from the team, so didn't want to misspoke and say he's out for season, but it sounds like he's in better health than he was, so hopefully he gets back out there on the field, and hopefully doesn't miss the whole season.
You kind of broke up a little bit. How long did you say he was out for?
It says he's out indefinitely.
Unknown?
So
Indefinitely.
Corleon,
Okay.
So hopefully he's back soon. We'll see on that though. But getting into Tafanu, obviously Utah, it's a team. If you're looking for defensive prospects, they are known for their ferocious defenses. It's a team that you have to watch. They're often ranking at the top of the conference. Numerous defensive stats. Tafanu is one of those players they'll be relying on to keep their defense towards the top of the conference this season as they switch over from the Pac-12 over to the Big 12. Just giving a little bit of a background on Tafanu, he was a two-time state champion in high school, ended up coming over to Utah. He was a redshirt his first season before becoming the full-time starter and all conference selection in each of the past 3 seasons. So coaches have really raved about his talents and stepping foot on campus. When you turn on the tape, it's easy to see why he has all of the hype around him. He's an impressive athlete for his size. He's got nimble feet. He's effective on twists and stunts, and his ability to slant in the gaps with quickness is exceptional. He has a quick first step. He's able to diagnose blocking schemes quickly and reacts accordingly. He's crossed his face, with excellent suddenness to fit his way into gaps. Able to generate power, with his strong upper body. His foot speed helps him chase down ball carriers in pursuit as well. Couple things still to work on. His contact balance could definitely use some work. Oftentimes when he connects with linemen, he stands straight up. He gets knocked off balance. Needs to learn to sink his pads a little bit on contact. He gets driven off the ball with relative ease, struggles mightily to take on double teams. Now, with that said, I still think he's a draftable prospect. He looks like a draftable prospect. He plays like a draftable prospect. And I think he's going to be a draftable player once we get into to the offseason. I definitely expect to hear his name called in the draft. Now, in terms of his drop in production, I didn't necessarily see why that could be, but still think he's a good player and good enough to get drafted.
Yeah, stats are stats. As we've mentioned before, sometimes they can be a little bit overrated. So I'm sure if you didn't see any difference in his game from the first season to the third. That's all maybe it is. Okay. One other player I just wanted to bring up was Lee Hunter from Central Florida, 6'4", 320 in 26 games over his first 2 seasons, but which was nice that he played a lot even in his first season as a freshman. I believe he was a freshman at the time, but he broke out as a true sophomore last year, had 69 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. So, by the way, Central Florida is going to be an underrated team. With KJ Jefferson leading the way and going through these reports over the last couple of shows, they got some players. So,
yeah, they totally revamped their defense too. 6 of their starting 11, according to Ourlads at least, are going to be transfers. I saw in your best of the rest, you had Deshaun Payson there as well, who's also a really good player. We'll talk about him a little later, but they got some guys for sure. All
right, linebacker, John. You mentioned before, Ben, Bywater from BYU. He's in his 6th year at about 6'3", 235, 240-ish. But here's a guy who actually broke out a couple of years ago in his 3rd year. I believe he was still a freshman at the time, a 3rd-year freshman, with 102 tackles leading the team. And he had a really good year again in 2022. Unfortunately, he injured his shoulder in week 4 last year. So maybe he's going to be able to sneak up on everybody again this year.
Well, that's kind of what I see in this guy. I love versatility, and this guy can play a lot of different spots in a defense. And the injury, he would have come out, I believe. We looked at him as a guy that would be a linebacker that would have been in the draft last year. We had, I forget where, we were thinking early on. But we liked him, and there's a lot of things. He's got good size, is somewhat of a slender frame, but he's got excellent length, and that really shows up, playing off blocks on the move. He's very quick with his hands to create separation, especially when he is working to the ball. When he's in chase mode, and he comes across a blocker, he can shoot those hands quickly and create separation immediately. He's at his best as a run and chase off the ball linebacker. He's very instinctive, and he can find the football. They like to line him up, or they have liked to line him up, off the edge, off the ball, kind of as a half in the box, half out of the box player. And he's been very effective in that role. He's been a good edge blitzer, but he can also sift inside and get skinny to the line to blitz inside gaps. He flashes very good coverage tools. He looks for work in the short and intermediate zones and flashes ability to find the throwing lane. Extreme quickness breaking on the ball. He sees the delivery key very well, and he breaks as the ball is released. He's got very good peripheral vision, as far as that goes. That's something, as a former linebacker coach for many years, we always talked about big eyes, having that peripheral vision where you can see the field and see multiple threats. He flashes that ability, and I say flashes for a reason. It doesn't always show like it should. The talent is certainly there, but there's some inconsistency. And there are some concerns. He's not the best take-on guy in line. He struggles to maintain leverage on straight-up blocks. He's not a natural knee bender in my observations. He can get bounced around a little bit when they put him, actually inside. But there was another guy that we said that about 2 years and years ago named Bryant because they moved him on so many different spots. And somebody got a hold of him and taught him how to take on blocks. And I think that's going to be some coaching point for this guy. I think his athleticism was good enough. The slender frame does bother me a bit. He's more of a wrap-up and drag tackler than a big hitter. He makes a lot of tackles beyond the line and in pursuit, however, with his quickness. There is an injury concern. The shoulder surgery did stem from that game he was hurt in September. He's a little overaged, as we talked about. 6th year at BYU, and he's, that's going to be a consideration. His zone cover skills, getting back to that, he can get caught covering grass and not locating threats within the zones, and that's what a zone cover linebacker has to do, especially if that's going to be one of the strengths of your game. Speed, quickness, reaction ability. He's got to be very consistent in zone coverage to get a job. as far as what he does this year will determine, I feel, his draft status, because that's what they're looking for. They want to see consistency in that area and how he plays in those areas. Again, they're going to move him around a lot because they're going to take advantage of his pass rush skill and moving him around and seeing what he can do and how he plays this year is going to determine whether we're looking at a second-day guy or third-day guy or whatever. I think the jury's out. But this is a very good, solid, athletic football player with great potential and can develop, I think, into a really, really good player. So I'm really looking forward to watching him this year because I was really high on him, from the 2022 season.
All right, Hayden, you wanted to talk some TCU football, and let me see if I can get this one. Is it Nnamdi Obiazor?
It is either Nnamdi Obiazor or I believe it's Nnamdi Obiazor. But
okay, I'll go with that. Only 225, but he broke out last year to lead the team in tackles and sacks.
Yeah, definitely. He's one of the guys that's got one of those tricky names. We always got one each and every week, so he's going to be the guy this week. But as I always say, love a good story. He's a guy that had to climb his way through the college ranks to get where he's at today. Ended up starting off at the junior college level, played at Iowa Western Community College, where he was actually a defensive back. So it's where some of he's 225 pounds, a little bit of a lighter type linebacker, where that frame comes from. But he was a first-team All-American at the junior college level before he accepted his only Power 5 offer to play at TCU. But since stepping on TCU's campus, he's appeared in all 25 games. He has 14 starts. Now, when you watch TCU's defense, I always like watching Big 12 defenses because they always run a lot of unique schemes. TCU runs the 3-3 stack still, which you don't see a ton of still, but they're a team that does it, truly stack their linebackers, so it's really fun to watch. But anyways, I digress. He's a great athlete for the position. He's got speed to make plays all over the field, takes great angles in pursuit on outside run plays with proper positioning. He uses a good punch to collision receivers in zone coverage, and he's a reliable tackler in space. He also showed some solid man coverage skills to handle slot receivers. He showed some decent technique. Probably wouldn't expect him to do that at the next level, but he proved that he has a little bit of experience doing that. He reminds me a lot of Jalen Carlisle coming out of Missouri from this past season. He's a guy that I thought would transition down to linebacker. Carlisle played mostly safety while he was at Missouri. And at the next level, just thought he was going to be more of a linebacker. Obiazor, he's already got that experience in the box, so won't have to be a transition just moving down. But he's going to have a unique role in the NFL and might not be able to hold his own in the trenches just due to his lack of size. He also has almost no ball skills production. So he only has 4 PBUs and 0 takeaways in his TCU career. So definitely if you're looking at an NFL prospect just from a numbers standpoint, numbers don't tell the whole story. Film is always number one. But if you're just looking solely at the numbers, that definitely stands out to me. However, whoever's going to take a chance on him, they're getting an athletic linebacker. He's got defensive back experience, and he should make an impact, especially on passing downs.
Well, they want guys in the NFL that can cover. That's going to be one of the first things they look for. The 2-down inside backer, they're still there, but they're not going to get drafted very high. And they want athletes that can move. So he's got some skills there. Iowa State plays that 3-3 too.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. I love the 3-3. It's fun to watch.
I like to coach against it. I had the horses.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Great segue there, John, to my next player, Colin Oliver, and I've been touting him for ever since we started this show. So I've been waiting for this one. And just talk about covering. He didn't have to cover many players his first couple of years, but then he went from an edge rusher to an off-ball linebacker last year and showed that he could cover. So this kid seems to have it all. Broke out, as we all know, as a true freshman. He was a monster right off the scene. And then again, his first 2 years as an edge defender, switched over to off-ball last year. So that's only going to be that much better for him when you're taking a look at what he could possibly do at the next level. And he also got another kid by the name of Nick Martin, who had a big year last year with 140 tackles. So You have Oliver, you have Martin, and I even believe they have another player, might be a safety. It's a player you're going to talk about, Hayden.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler alert, he's moving down to linebacker. So they're going to have a bunch of linebackers this year.
There you go. So, but yeah, I mean, what's this? Oliver, because I'm just going to run through a list of other guys, but Oliver
is going to be a good one to watch this year to see what he does inside. He's played all over, like you say, and he's going to have to develop, so the things he needs to do. I've seen film on him, and there's definitely some possibilities with him. He's a good take on guy, and he's got looks to me like he can run.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, this Oklahoma State team this season. So they're supposed to be one of the better teams in the Big 12, and he's going to be a big part of it. I mentioned Nick Martin. Other names to keep an eye on: Jacob Manu from Arizona. He's a Polynesian kid who actually had 54 tackles as a true freshman, and then led the Pac-12 last year as a sophomore with 116 tackles. So keep an eye on Jacob Manu from Arizona. Matt Jones is a sixth-year senior with excellent size out of Baylor. He led the team in tackles and tackles for loss last year. Austin Moore from Kansas State, only 6'1", 219, but he led the team in tackles, and also actually was tied for the lead in tackles in 2023. And then he led the team in 2022 with 87. Also led the team with 12.5 tackles for loss last year. Deshaun Pace, as Hayden mentioned, Pace, who is the brother of Ivan Pace Jr., who's now with Minnesota. Everybody's shocked that he didn't get drafted. We'll see what Deshaun Pace happens to him. He actually had a big year with Cincinnati last year, so he's going to be playing for Central Florida for the first time this year. He led the Bearcats with 80 tackles and 11 tackles for loss last season. And I also just wanted to mention Jack Kelly. We haven't seen him yet. He's going to be playing with BYU for the first time. He's a Weber State kid, but he had a big career at Weber State. And he's also going to be playing under Jay Hill, the defensive coordinator over at BYU, who was the head coach at Weber State just a couple of years ago. Very successful head coach, actually. But this kid Kelly is the real deal. Led the Big Sky with 10.5 sacks and 4 forced fumbles last year. So keep an eye on Jack Kelly. And also Kareem Reed out of Utah. Keep an eye on this kid. Only 6'2", 227, but he's been highly productive. And anybody who's productive playing defense at Utah, you want to keep an eye on. Of course, Hayden filled us in with Tafuna just a little while ago. So before we move on to the secondary, I don't know if there was if either of you guys wanted to throw in anything from those guys I mentioned.
Well, anytime you mention Ivan Pace Jr., I get excited. As Hayden knows, that was my third-round pick that didn't get drafted.
Yep.
That's right. Hey, his brother's really good, too. I had the chance to go watch Cincinnati in person last year. For all of my nickel extraordinaires out there, I know I said on a previous podcast, I love the nickel position. Deshaun Pace is a really good one. UCF's getting a really good player again.
Yeah, digressing, I had back before the nickel, we played a lot of nickel as base, about 70% of the time because we were good and teams were throwing against us. And we had a kid make all-conference. We didn't have an all-conference spot for nickel. So they just said, put him up as a linebacker. He's one of the best players in our league. He played 80% of the snaps. And that position, now that was in 2014. So even since then, that position has really, really in the NFL become important. Whether it's a big nickel or a little nickel.
That's right.
Okay, let's talk about the secondary in the Big 12. And when we're talking secondary in the Big 12, John, I'm not sure we can get past this first name. It has to start, of course, with Travis Hunter. We already talked about him last week on offense, or a couple of weeks ago on offense. We knew we were going to get around to talking about him on defense. And again, though, the one thing I do have to ask you about, which is going to be something that's going to be talked about, especially because he got banged up last year, he actually led college football with 1,044 snaps in only 9 games last year. You know, that snap count has got to be managed, doesn't it? Because, and at some point, he's got to maybe become more of, and I don't know if Dion's going to do it, but at some point, it's got to be, okay, well, instead of him playing, a high percentage on offense or defense. Maybe he just becomes like a gadget guy on offense and sticks to defense. I'm not sure if that's going to be the way it's going to go because, as you mentioned, wide receivers are getting paid so much money nowadays that it's going to be tough for him to not try to be that top wide receiver getting paid big time at the NFL level.
Well, I think the other thing is, Deion, the way he talks, he says you have a quote from Deion Sanders. You have to use him both ways, and I think
he doesn't care.
He
doesn't care how he runs him into the ground.
Right. But I think he's talking about the NFL, and I think there's some merit to that. I go back to Deion himself, who was used as a situational receiver.
Sure.
When he played, I go back to Roy Green, who came out in the NFL as a defensive back with the Cardinals, and he ended up as a receiver. He was a returner, a tremendous returner, and he ended up one season. I remember seeing Cardinal games, and he would play 85 to 90 snaps a game. And of course, the NFL doesn't have that many snaps. And he ended up being the nickelback. And so he was a situational player. Obviously, the nickels become much more predominant than it was in 1981-82. So Roy Green could do that, and he had in 3 different games interceptions and touchdown catches. I don't know if Travis Hunter will be that guy, that two-way player. It just is. There have been some two-way players, however, some guys that have done both, usually in very small roles. I go back to, there's been some defensive linemen that have played fullback, and there's been some fullbacks that have played linebacker, and so on down the line. And I can go. I'm not going to throw out any more names than that, but it's been done.
But what kind of a percentage, though, would you think would be reasonable if he becomes, say, a wide receiver? Well, really, it's more about him being a defensive back and then getting some time at receiver. Don't you think that's more of the case?
I think it can go either way. I think it makes more sense to do the defensive back, because it's a demanding position, and if he's your best corner, you're going to want him on the field. Receivers, let's be honest, how many times do they touch the ball in a game? They run pass routes. They do a lot of running routes and a lot of stock blocking, and a lot of times there's not a whole lot of action. Corners you never know. A corner never knows when he's going to be involved. Receivers always know, and the coach knows when he puts a receiver in if they're going to use him within that package. So I think it makes more sense to have him be a starting corner, or maybe probably not a nickel, maybe a slot corner he can be, but a starting corner and a situational wide receiver. Maybe your 4 wide receiver package when you get into 10 personnel, stuff like that. He could be an impact player, maybe 17, 20 snaps a game. That makes the most sense to me, and I think it does to you too.
Yep.
But on the other hand, you just never know what a team's going to say when they look at it. They may say, this kid's just such a great receiver.
Yeah.
But I like the defensive back idea. As an old coach, we had a great player, All-American player that played for us that was just exactly that. He was a full-time corner and maybe 15 snaps a game wide receiver, and he made some big, big plays as a wide receiver. So that makes sense. But anyway, as a defensive back, again, the things we said about him a week ago, a tremendous athlete, explosive movements. He's very versatile in his coverage abilities. He can do a lot of things. He's a great zone defender, but he can also play very good man-to-man. And watching him on film, he can stay in phase on vertical routes. He doesn't lose He doesn't lose the race. I mean, he will stay with anybody. He's very effective with both an offhand, two-hand jam and a reactive press technique. You never know what he's going to do. He keeps receivers off balance, and he can be disruptive with solid two and offhand jams. Quick, smooth footwork, fluid hips, explosive athleticism. Those are the things that allow him to mirror receivers throughout the route. And he can dictate the action. He's very, very sticky as a man defender. As a zone corner, the thing that I like, he's extremely smart in the way he reacts. He's tremendously quick reacting. His ability to balance routes and zone coverage is unique for a guy that's playing two ways. Whether it's playing cover 2 or whether it's playing, in an overlapping zone in a deep outside. He positions himself extremely well that he can bait quarterbacks into bad throws because he can close. His plant and drive, or as some people like to say, click and close, is extremely quick. Excellent zone defender. Very smart. He's got the ability. One of the things I like about him, it seems like he knows what the play is based on looking at the formation and the route. It's what appears to me is that he really understands offensive formations and what routes can show up. Very good red zone defender. He can do. His techniques are very good. There's an awful lot to like about him. Pressing, whether it's press and bail, disguising what he's going to do. He's a smart player. He's a kind of a Night Train Lane type guy, except he's a lot smarter than Night Train was. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But I saw him play, and I saw a lot of the corners of the 1960s era, 50s, 60s era play. And that was when the passing game was all man-to-man and with a sprinkling of zone. But this is a talented football player. One concern, lack of weight and bulk. Doesn't have a lot of mass, thin frame, and he has some trouble at the catch point with powerful receivers. He can get out positioned. Receivers can use their body to shield him away from the ball. On some of those, break and drive is great, but if that big receiver can outfight you for the ball, on those short throws or those intermediate throws, that's a little bit of a problem. He needs to be a little bit in his press technique, just a little thing. Too much two-hand punch can get him out of position. He needs to really work that offhand jam and turn and run. He has the speed to get back in phase for sure, but in the NFL, it's a little different. So, there's a few developmental things he's going to need to use. As far as, playing the run, he's more of a catch and hang on tackler than a gather and drive guy. He can get dragged at times, but he's willing. His skills are tremendous, and he is going to be, in my opinion, a first-round pick no matter where you use him. I hate to say that this soon, but this is a pretty unique player. And I'm not saying he's the best corner in the draft yet. I want to see the other guys. I'm not going to stack him yet, but I see a rare talent in this kid.
Yeah, we talked about the Ohio State, Michigan, and you could even throw in Notre Dame. I mean, but the Michigan-Ohio State duo in the Big Ten is going to be really, really elite. So, wow, they're going to have their hands. General managers are going to be salivating at some of these corners coming out potentially this season. All right, 2 more to go. One more for each of you guys, both from Kansas. So Kobe Bryant, John, this is the player you wanted to talk about. Hayden's going to talk about Romelo Dodson, but we'll start with you, John, and Kobe Bryant, because he's been pretty consistent over his 3 years at Kansas. That includes 9 interceptions and a couple of touchdowns, a couple of pick sixes. He's also, been a willing run defender. He's a physical corner. So another corner that is going to add to a elite corner draft potentially in 2025.
Yeah, Kobe Bryant's on the lighter side, for a corner. He's a speed corner. He's a playmaker. He's got that it factor. As you said, he's got a couple of career pick sixes. He had 4 interceptions last year. And, as a break on the ball, break on the run, he had some TFLs as well. Decent height, decent length. Frame is a little bit slender, as I mentioned. Fluid mover, smooth in all reactions with easy change of direction. He excels as a press corner. He mirrors the entire route tree. He can stick a route and get underneath the receiver, allowing very little window to throw in. He has deep speed to stay in phase up the field. He's at his best, in my opinion, as a man corner, but he flashes very good zone cover skill. There's sometimes he gives up a little too much room, and there's a little bit of hesitation at times, but when he sees it and when he breaks on the ball, his plant and drive is excellent, especially with the ball in the air. He reads the delivery key normally very well. He gets a good break on the ball. I like the way he gets his inside hand to the catch point, and he can convert interception opportunities. Very good hands. A little bit of a gambler, susceptible to big plays if he whiffs. He'll come downhill maybe a little early, trying to get that inside hand in or go for the pick, and he'll get beat. Good recovery speed, and that's a big plus for him. He's a willing tackler, but his slight build inhibits his ability to gather and drive. He's not a great gather and drive guy. He's not a take-on block guy. He's an outrun blocks guy. And he's a hang-on, wrap and drag type tackler, but he can get carried a little bit. You'd like to see maybe a little more bulk as he moves forward, but he's got the height, he's got the length. He's a very consistent player. And, Kansas has a nice pair of corners there.
Oh, yeah. And Hayden is going to talk about the other one, Romelo Dodson, who actually, speaking of pick sixes, he had 2 last year out of his 4 interceptions. So that's going to be a hell of a pair of corners. Boy, a lot to be excited about at Kansas coming up this season.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, they got 2 great corners this year. Now, Dodson, he's going to be more of a secret this year. Obviously, you're looking at Kansas. They don't have a history of success. Now, they've been successful over the past couple of years since Lance Leipold got there, but traditionally not one of those powerhouse type schools. And then on top of that, you have Kobe Bryant that's across from him, another great corner. So he's going to be a guy that, all eyes are going to be on Bryant this year, who's a heck of a player in his own right, as Coach Cooper was just talking about. But I wanted to highlight Dodson. He's a really good player too. He's going to get much less publicity, but good player in his own right. You might not have heard of him. He was one of the most productive corners in college football last season. You talked about it. He had 2 pick sixes last year, so took 2 of them to the house, 4 interceptions in total, and he also had 11 PBUs in 2023 as well. He stepped on campus in 2020, immediately became a starter, and was finally rewarded that this past season. He was an all-conference honorable mention, so still hasn't gotten on the official all-conference team, but he was at least an honorable mention this past season. He's got good size for a corner. He's got 6'1". He's got long arms. He's got length, 190 pounds. He shows a fluid pedal and off man. He's got notable change of direction. Can break downhill in an instant. He can also drop his pads to match receivers on sharp breaks. Excellent mental processing. He sees routes, develops really quickly, reacts accordingly while reading the quarterback as well. Can see the whole field, especially in Kansas's heavy zone scheme. Would like to see him shed blocks a little bit better, I should say. He gets caught up on receivers quite a bit, limited ways to disengage. So would like to see him disengage a little better. One of the bigger problems of his, he doesn't necessarily have the top end speed that you look for a corner. He doesn't have bad speed. His speed's pretty solid, but it's not great. Not going to be able to take burners across the field or potentially vertically as well. He also ducks his head when he tackles. It causes him to miss. Allows receivers to bounce off of him, so also a problem there. But if you're looking for a lengthy corner who's got a knack for getting his hands on the ball, then Dodson might be your cup of tea.
All right.
And watching Kansas play, Hayden, and they would avoid Kobe sometimes and go after him because they thought he was the lesser of the 2 corners in Kansas film I watched, and he held up very well. So, he's a solid – you got 2 good corners there. His production was partly because they tested him a lot.
Yes.
and he came to the party, and it made it difficult for teams playing against those 2 corners.
Yeah, and practice, these guys, this is what you love about when you're building a team, and they always talk about competition. That's why competition is important, not just for each position, but – for a quarterback as talented as Jalen Daniels, this gives these guys, and both Daniels and the 2 corners, an opportunity to go up against each other in practice. And that's just going to make these guys better. So Kansas is definitely a team to keep an eye on this season. One more player I wanted to talk about and mention was Tacario Davis. He's going to be a junior this year from Arizona.
Yeah.
And what sticks out, of course, is his incredible size. He's 6'4", close to 200 pounds. He led the Pac-12 as a true sophomore with 15 pass breakups last year. So you can just imagine that the sky's the limit with this kid if he has a really good junior season. All right. let's now move on to safety as we wrap up the program. And we have one player for each of you guys. We're going to start with John as we go back to Iowa State with Jeremiah Cooper at safety. Cooper had 5 interceptions and a pick 6 last year. So why did you want to talk about Cooper, John?
Well, I think, you might be looking at one of the top safeties in this draft. He's only a 21. He'll only be 21 years old when the draft concludes. So he's a young guy as a junior, and you hope he comes out. But, he also had 10 pass breakups along with those 5 picks. He was a first team guy, all conference player. And this kid can play the ball. I mean, he's a tremendous athlete. He's a very athletic, fluid mover, very productive, making plays on the ball as we talk. He's a quick, explosive downhill reactor with a play in front of him, whether it's a short pass or run. He's quick enough to outrun blocks and takes excellent angles to the ball, whether tackling or whether it's breaking on a pass. I mean, he's really got some elite skill in that area. He's also an excellent zone defender with route recognition. His peripheral vision, his big eyes are definitely on display as he can see and react to multiple threats. Balances those multiple routes, whether he's in a short zone or whether he's in a deep middle. And he can find the throwing lane. His break on the ball, whether it's on short, intermediate routes, while defending deep, is incredible. That's the thing that I really, really like about him. The ground that he covers, breaking on the ball. And he's another one that can give a quarterback a false sense of security by positioning himself, balancing multiple routes, and thinks he's got a window, and all of a sudden Cooper closes it. He's got range. The ball reactions and ball skills are tremendous. The fact that he's a former receiver doesn't hurt. He can get to the high point on interception opportunities, and he's shown that last year. Getting his hands on balls and sometimes just making great big hits, separating guys from the ball, is another thing that he does well. And, coming downhill. He normally tackles well, but lack of bulk shows up at times as he can get dragged. That's one of the only thing that worries me. I think we're looking at a 185-pound kid, 6 foot, 185. So, he's not the biggest guy as a safety. He's a ball skill safety. He's probably going to be at his best as a deep safety. There's times where he will launch into a tackle without wrapping, and that concerns me. And as a coach, I like to see my safeties be your best fundamental tacklers on the team. Doesn't always happen anymore because coverage is at a premium, but still, I want more consistency. I want to see more consistency out of Cooper. The talent is there to do it, but that lack of bulk, as I said, is an issue. He has some durability concerns, missed some time in both 2022 and 2023. But so that's, something to watch to see where he ends up. But this is a good football player. Watching Iowa State on tape, you can't help but notice his movement skills.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's a lot of changing in the NFL, and one of the things that's changing, we got wide receivers becoming such a big part of the offense, and they're getting all the big bucks. On the other side, even though corners, we talked about with Hunter, they get paid big if they're the elite guys, but the safeties, they're just it's amazing. They're again, and maybe a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're moving these guys, especially with the safeties, a little closer to the line of scrimmage, but they're not paying them like they used to. Matter of fact, if you take a look at the free agents that are still available in the NFL right now, all of the top guys are safeties.
Yeah, some of these guys, and they think they're going to get more money. There's a couple of real good ones that are out there, and and most of these NFL teams want 3 safeties. They want 3 good ones. Maybe they want a box safety that's going to play in a 6 defensive back package, in your dime package. You want a big nickel.
Yep.
All you got to do is take a look at Hamilton. He played 3 positions. He played slot corner, he played deep safety, and he played a strong safety spot, big nickel.
But John, he didn't run a good 40. He was slow, John. Come on. He can't run the 40. He doesn't. I mean, I was surprised he was drafted as high as he was.
Well, you got to remember something.
Remember? He was supposed to be a top 5 draft pick, top 10 draft pick.
I saw the whole thing, and I even had big arguments with somebody who told me he was going to be a bust. One of my very good friends was a scout. Said, he's going to be a bust. He can't run. Okay, well, okay. Now I don't say much to him about it now.
You don't need to.
I just let Kyle do the talking. But
That's
he's
it.
so versatile, and having versatility at that position. And you got to remember something. You're 6'4", tough to throw over. Tough to throw over that kid. Some of these big corners that don't necessarily have blazing speed. Okay, they're underneath a guy in a deep route. Okay, quarterback, where's your window? Where's your bucket to throw that ball in? Not too many there's not a lot of Aaron Rodgers out there that can drop it right in. And so, that height is something.
Yep.
And I wish my guy Jeremiah had a little bit more of that, but I think he's a really, really good safety, and there's been some real good ones. But I think he's going to be a little bit limited to how they use him. But I think as a deep safety, he's going to be really, really good.
Well, it's another good segue, John, because I got a safety for you who does have height, and that is Kendall Daniels. Now, even though I guess, Hayden, you mentioned that he's going to be moving in at linebacker, but he's only 213 right now. Now, maybe he bulks up, but still, for the NFL, he's going to end up a safety. But this guy has no height issues at 6'4", 213, the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year back in 2022, which was only a couple years ago, of course. But in his first 2 seasons, he has 176 tackles combined. He's just, a production machine. And those 3 linebackers at Oklahoma State this year might be as good as we've seen in a while for one team.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. I was on the same page as you. I looked on online, saw he was 213 pounds, watched the tape, thought, hey, he's a pretty good safety prospect. Went online, did a little bit more deep research into him. Mike Gundy announced this year, probably a month ago, he's 240 pounds now. So
wow.
Yeah. So he bulked up quite a bit. So
huge. No wonder why he's moving to safety.
It was interesting because the staff still even talked about him like, yeah, we'll put him down at linebacker, but he's still got that can play deep and play middle of the field. But as 240 pounds, I'd love to see that.
Well, there have been some good kids that have moved down and played linebacker from the safety position. Some really, really good ones in the NFL. Even some guys that were part-time linebackers that, were so versatile. They played a lot of different roles. And that's the NFL and defense these days, except for certain positions, is about versatility.
Absolutely. No kidding on that. And just to give a little bit of insight into Kendall Daniels, who he is, he's an Oklahoma kid through and through. He decided to stay in his home state out of high school. He had offers from essentially every major college that you can think of: Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Florida State, LSU, all the big schools, any big school that you can think of. He had an offer to him. He decided to stay home and play for Oklahoma State, which is about an hour and a half drive from his high school. So convenient to him, close to family. So totally understand. Ended up coming in. He redshirted for a season. After that redshirt season, he became the Big 12 Freshman of the Year on defense and a second-team all-conference selection during his redshirt freshman season. He followed it up with honorable mention all-conference honors this past season, and heading into 2024, he's going to be looking to have his best season yet. Like I just talked about, Mike Gundy said he's 240 pounds now. The defense that they run at Oklahoma State is a little bit unique. I'll get a little bit more into that in just a second. But we'll have to see where they play him out, how often they play him in the box, how often they play him back. But 240 pounds, you probably expect him to be playing inside linebacker. He's set to have a big season. His play on the field speaks for itself. Now, Oklahoma State runs a 3-3 stack. It's very similar to what I was talking about with TCU, but they run a 3 high safety look as well behind it. Now, playing against these type of defenses before, Daniels is the guy that's been playing that middle safety spot. And generally, the middle safety is a guy that they just tell, this is from my experience coaching against him, go find the football and make a play, essentially. So
alley to alley run defenders.
Alley to alley run defenders, exactly. So, he's not afraid to fly full speed downhill into the box, lay out running backs like a hammer. He has excellent size, as we talked about, 6'4" tall. Now he's 240 pounds as well. I would describe him really more so as a big ball of clay more than anything. I don't want to say he's a polished prospect, especially now moving positions, but he could be a really impressive player with his athleticism, his size, his strength. I think it's going to be interesting watching him. Now, he lunged a lot when he was tackling. He missed a noticeable amount. And if he's going to play at the next level at linebacker, he needs to fix his form. He's also a little – yeah, no doubt about that. He's also a little hesitant at times when filling holes from his high safety position. So definitely something to keep track of for sure. But watching his play style, I think his best fit will indeed be in the box. And I'm really excited to see how he continues to develop as a prospect.
How rare would it be, John, if let's say he gets to the next level and they determine, whoever drafts him, that, I think we'd rather have you back at safety and we need to cut that weight down again. Is that rare for a team to say that, especially if they think that you're just going to be better off for it?
Yeah, I don't know how much that's happened. I've seen some guys that have been Swiss Army knife type guys that have gone back and forth. Guys like Isaiah Simmons. Is what are we going to do with this guy? You know what I mean? I think the guy you're talking about there could be that guy. What are we going to do with him? You know what I mean? Is he instinctive enough to play off the ball linebacker? Unknown.
Yeah.
That's something that you'll find out this year.
Yep.
And I think before he gets into the NFL, there'll be a pretty concise decision made. I don't know if that's the right word, but as to what he's going to do. Because they want to see what he does this year. And again, he's playing a role that is not necessarily an NFL-like role. He's going to cover seams, which he'll have to do as a linebacker because that's part of what they do at that position. He's going to have some read and react because they'll play some match coverage where they're going to – the routes and the formation will dictate where you go in terms of get a flat route, releases on your seam. Now you become a hole player, as far as how that's going to be played. So, those are things that, they'll want to see, okay, what kind of coverage instincts does he have? There's going to be a lot to be determined by how he plays this year. And NFL teams have a trick because they don't play 3-3 stack.
Yeah.
Not the way the college teams play it. They play what they call a joker package in their version of the 3-3. And a lot of times your joker is a defensive end that's stacked right behind the nose. And teams that use the joker. You still see it once in a while in the NFL. Joker can move around a little bit. But that's the 3-3 the NFL plays, and that's not a role that he would probably play.
Well, fact is, at least he's going to get the opportunity to showcase, a different position, different size, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We'll see whether or not he can put it all together.
Well, you'll see what kind of instincts he has in coverage back there, and you'll see how he plays the ball. Taking on blocks is going to be if they do ever move him down in the box. You have to see how he does there. And again, a team's going to say, "Hey, look, we can develop this kid. He's got length. He's got everything. Let's take him. We might not take him real high. Let's take him and develop him because we're always looking for versatility. And this kid shows versatility. Let's draft him and let's work with him. That's why these coaches get paid.
That's it.
And some of those guys are sitting in the draft room saying, "Hey, I can work with that kid." I mean,
someone will. Yeah,
I would. I mean, if
absolutely.
I like the kid. I mean, when we were, the recruiting days, and Hayden, that I can work with this kid. That's. In the NFL, obviously, we're going to draft him or sign him as a free agent, whatever we're going to do. So, there's the key.
All right. Just want to run through the final best of the rest, and they include Jordan Riley, a Ball State transfer who will be playing for Kansas State. He had a couple of big seasons for the Cardinals, combining 157 tackles and 20 pass breakups the last 2 years. So we'll see how he plays in the Big 12. Shiloh Sanders, formerly of Jackson State, fifth-year grad senior for Colorado, led the team last year in tackles and forced fumbles, added a pick 6. Also, Bud Clark out of TCU has got some pretty good size. Last couple of years, he's had 8 interceptions and a pick 6. And Marquise Sigel out of Kansas State, maybe a little small, but that's because he played FCS football with North Dakota State until last year when he played with Kansas State and tied the lead for tackles with 63. Also had 9 pass breakups and an interception. So some other players to keep an eye on at safety in the Big 12. And there's a lot more than that that we have no time for here today, but we're going to have more than enough time between now and the beginning of the season to discuss here on the Ourlads football channel. So if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, and share. Hit that notification bell so you know when these videos are going to be available. And as we said at the beginning of the show, it looks like at some point we're going to just, instead of going conference by conference into group of 5, we're just going to put them all together, maybe do offense, group of 5, defense group of 5, add in those 4 Power 5, I guess, or Power 4 now that they're going to call it, teams that we did not talk about. So look out for that. And then after that, we're going to have some more cool scouting videos here all the way through till not just the end of the year or end of the season, but I don't know. I guess as long as we're alive, John, is that pretty much how we're going to say it? This is just going to go on and on and on. And
stay tuned. You never know what's going to happen.
You don't. That's what's great about football. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on the Ourlads Football Channel.